Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to you, whoever is tuned in and is watching us today here at the tower at UNN. So today we're going to be looking at, of course, Uganda's economic crisis as prices of commodities, regular day-to-day use in the household commodities continue to rise, affecting the populace and the people, affecting everyone, and the milking of the economy continues uh, to be put on stage display by this ruling class, by this regime. The people suffer more and more. So today we're going to be looking at not only what has caused Uganda's economy to reach there, but also what we can do amongst ourselves to, bring the power back to within ourselves to control our economic affairs, because they have sold our economic affairs for the benefits of their own and just a few other monopolies. As usual, I'm going to be with Mr. Remigius Kintu on this show today. But before we get into the show and Mr. Kintu come in to introduce himself, first we will do the national anthem. And then right after the national anthem, we will just have a song to remind us of the state that we're in as a nation. And that once we always recall that state that we find ourselves in, maybe then the economic eruptions happening now can begin to make sense. So I'll ask the producer to first play the national anthem, and then we will go into that musical break, and then the show will begin.
Oh, Uganda, may God uphold thee. We lay our future in thy hand. United, free, for liberty, together we'll always stand. Oh, Uganda, the land of freedom, our love and labor we give, and we've neighbors all at our country's calling, peace and friendship.
Today, we shall not be playing a state anthem today. And today we thought to better organize and bring our thoughts together, a reflection. And there is a song that addresses so many things that we're going to talk about today, although today we're going to basically focus our discussion in the economy. But this song manages to wrap not only the economy, but the social and the calamity that has happened to Ugandan people in one. So we shall start with that song for today's show as an exception and not do a state anthem. So if the producer could please play that song.
Abantu baffe tebandifuddamu, Bannayuganda bangi bandiwonye okubeera mu makomera gano gasiibazimba, oyo bamulaba ng'asala ensalo. Bannayuganda tuyizeemu ki? Kituyigiriza kiffe ku byatukoze, tuyizeemu ki? Twetegeke yeneesobyeremu okudda. Oyo bamulaba yali munaku nnyo, yayingira Uganda ng'atambula, yali sosola mawanga omubbi w'eggwanga kayibanda watuzaalira omutemu ono atasiima ne bw'omukoolera amala n'akutta oyo bamulaba yali munaku kati yadaaza abanaku abamukuza bamulabamu ekikyamu bwe yali omuto oyo nga yeewala okubeera mu banne zembeera ze nga bwakama amata tegawera munafusi kyova olaba alemedde mu ntebe y'omwana wa Uganda bannayuganda abalondo waabwe afuge Uganda kati alemeddemu omubbi w'entebe
Welcome back. Without further ado, I would like to invite Mr. Kintu to come and, provide his greetings to our viewers, and then from there we shall pick up today's show. If you can hear me.
Thank you very much, Desire, for that wonderful introductory song, which sums up the whole story of what we are going to deal with and the suffering of our country. We welcome you to this show. Before I go any further, I want to wish all the mothers a very happy Mother's Day. God bless you, because we all have mothers, and we hope we shall have more mothers out of you. Thank you very much for being good mothers to all of us.
Yeah, thank you for reminding me. For a lapse of a minute, I forgot. But happy Mother's Day to all mothers, nurturers out there. We appreciate you. We all would not exist without a mother. So, but as we start today's show, why also that introductory song was chosen was it seems to be like the season of lamentation is over for us as Ugandans. And now we must steer to the next stage of action where lamentation should come into action, because the song laments a lot about what has passed or what has been done. But before we get into the details of that, if the producer can please play today's first video, we're going today to look at how the economy has been addressed, how the economy has been not only captured and seized for a few in the Ugandan public to benefit, but it has been done in a way where it's, the parliament is like the mafia syndicate, where projects and contracts are only given to monopolies and single companies, and the workers are expected to foot the bill. So we're going to look at this through different angles. But before we go any further, we're going to listen to, of course, the tyrant himself lie and blabber on about being a native bourgeoisie or middle class, as he refers to himself, and then we'll pick up the show from there.
I heard Baguma calling me a chief worker. I'm not a worker myself. I'm not a worker. I am a bourgeoisie. I am part of the middle class. You cannot call the middle class workers. Just they take the literal meaning. The one who works is a worker. No, that's not an ideological definition. Of course I work, but I'm not a worker. I work as a member of the middle class. And the middle class has got categories. You have got the bureaucratic bourgeoisie, like these civil servants. Civil servants are bureaucratic bourgeoisie. The teachers like Baguma, those are petty bourgeoisie. That's what we call them. Now, groups like Kasita, do you know something called Kasita? Those who specialize in imports. Those are comprador bourgeoisie, agents of foreign interests, whose job is to sell other people's goods here. They are called comprador. Comprador is a French word meaning agent. They are agent bourgeoisie. Now, the positive bourgeoisie, the ones who would like to promote, are people like Murwana, the ones who were, even myself, you can add me in that group. Are the ones we call the national bourgeoisie. The national bourgeoisie, the ones who build up the economic strength of the country. Mao Zedong was very clear on this. That's how China came up. He was able to identify the positive bourgeoisie and the negative ones, like the comprador bourgeoisie. Those are negative group. Just importing. Yeah. Now you see the retro war we are having with the coffee issue. That coffee issue is very, very interesting. And I'm very glad people have put in writing their views. I'm very, Mbamaze, you put something in writing down, you are finished. If it is wrong, you cannot take it back. They are attacking the coffee deal, that the coffee deal is bad. What? Oh, thank you very much. We are now going to study you. You have put it in writing. It's in black and white. And that is a struggle between the comprador bourgeoisie, the agents of foreign interests, and the national bourgeoisie. So the workers, of course here, the model of workers is not strictly like what was in Europe. In Europe, according to Karl Marx, in 1848, when he wrote his manifesto, is the worker who has no other asset except his labor. Because in Europe, some of the people were farmers, some were middle class, and the workers had no property. The only thing they had to sell was their labor. But in our case here, you find people, he's a worker in a factory, the proletariat. The people that were calling proletariat workers were the proletariat, not the bagumas. Those are employees, but not workers. You should call yourselves employees of the government, but not workers. Workers are, strictly speaking, the proletariat, the ones working in the factories. But that is something we shall sort out. The only thing that was worrying me, which we must address in the coming budgets, now we may not be able to address it, was the issue of the weather. Because these other issues, there is war in Ukraine and Russia, there will be no bread. If there's no bread, eat muhogo. Muhogo is here. What is the problem? You know, Africans really confuse themselves. You are crying that there is no wheat. I don't eat bread myself. If there's no bread, eat muhogo. Muhogo is here. So my real worry was actually the weather. Because the rain was becoming delayed, actually, it delayed. Instead of starting in March, it started in April. So I think as a country, we should plan that in the next budgets, maybe in the other one, we are now not able, but deal with the issue of irrigation. so that we don't depend on this. Once we do that, for me, I'm not concerned with anything. If whoever wants to, Uganda has got everything. There's nothing we lack. It is a question of just waking up. Even in the next few years, we shall be having our petroleum here, and we have got other energy sources. So all those don't concern us. It is the only one I think now we must look at is irrigation, because that one is the one which can cause us real problems if the rain fails. And this is where the issue of Owere comes now, and his group. Workers. How many are you? Owere, come and tell us how many you are. How many members do you have? Come and tell us on the microphone there. Workers, trade union, what? How many are you?
Your Excellency, in trade union we have 1.5 million.
Oh, now you hear?
And the potential workers are 12 million.
Don't say potential, the ones you have now.
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. Now you hear these workers, 1.5 million. And that includes the other group of Baguma. You heard the other man of Baguma? The one who was speaking there. No, don't worry, Owere, you go and sit. Beping. That Baguma man is a teacher. So those are government workers. So this 1.5 million includes government workers who are like, I think they are like 0.5 now.
It is always painful to watch Museveni try to tackle with theory, especially nation building theory, and present it back in ways that he deems. It's almost the manner he speaks at. He's speaking to his children, even how he called a trade union advisor to come and advise on the number of workers. But in regards to that messaging, to a few questions that I thought I had around this video is when he was speaking, for once, and yet this is another one of the other things that seem to agitate this regime. And I'm just going to use Museveni as an example, but the economic stand of Uganda as it stands of today seems to be an agitating point at the foundation of what they have built for themselves. And I was hoping you could speak to this on how they have constructed the economy to only benefit a class or a circle of few that has left that avenue just a ticking time bomb for when the time comes.
Yes, you are right. I happen to be an economist by training,
Oh.
and listening to that garbage coming out of his mouth
Yeah.
proves to me even more what I already know, that here is somebody that one of my teachers long time ago, when I was studying at Busubi's teacher training, used to refer to some people who parade themselves as if they know something when they know nothing. and called them the unbaptized chameleons. And this is a very good example of a typical unbaptized chameleon. He's pretending to talk about a subject about which he knows virtually nothing. Total garbage out of his mouth. Doesn't even understand the concept of work, the concept of organized economic activities. He's just blowing hot air out of his mouth. And I understand exactly where he's coming from because I know that the only book which Museveni has read, well, he has read a few books, besides Karl Marx and Lenin, and his Bible is this book. If you can see it, it is called The New Theories of Revolution by Jack Wadis. I know that this is his Bible. And when I have read this book, by the way, because I tried to understand my enemies, and there is nothing constructive except destructive. And he has followed this book, which is full of nothing but destructive theories. And he has proved to be right on the dot regarding this book, because the first thing he has done is to destroy everything in Uganda that existed before he came around. The infrastructure, as you know, the banking industry is all gone. The manufacturing industries are all destroyed. The commercial, transport, communication, you name it, including the essential services like education, medical services. He has destroyed everything. And that's all he knows. It's just like a maggot. If you put, you know very well, anybody who knows what a maggot is, it makes food or fruits or anything go bad. Now, if you move a maggot from a good orange or a good mango and put it in a, if you move a maggot from a rotten mango and you put it in a good mango, within a few hours, that new mango is going to be what? Rotten too, because that's what a maggot knows how to do. And that's what Yoweri Museveni is. Just plain bunch of destructive element. So I cannot put to shame my profession or my good academic training by discussing his issues. He has put out some garbage words, middle class, bourgeoisie, I mean, this is not garbage, absolute garbage. He doesn't even understand what that means. Now, if you go back to all history, it was kind of people who have driven their countries into the ditch because they pretend to know, or they try to put themselves among the class of knowledgeable, civilized human beings when they are not even fit to be at the veranda or outside in the field. So what can we say? Just look at Uganda, the egg of the country. Although they claim, I have seen a listing of them owning everything, but they have just empty shells. If there was an economic vibrant country, if there was an economic vibrant, robust economy, you would see something going on, that people wouldn't be suffering the way they are. But they are proud of saying, I own this. When you look into it, there is nothing. They have mortgaged everything to the Chinese, to the Indians, and the Western capitalist multinational corporations, which own everything, and they are taking away everything. There is nothing left. Let's take a simple a simple thing. Lake Victoria. Lake
Yeah.
Victoria has all kinds of fish. There we could get all kinds of fish. Eningu,
Mm.
Mputa hadn't come by then.
Ngege.
Ebisinja, Engege,
Mm.
and what is Asurubana, you name it. They are not there anymore. And now on top of that, they are killing the native fishermen so that the Chinese can fish and they take everything to feed their Chinese people in Beijing. Now, how can you tell me you're running an economy when you are even depriving your own people what they should be eating? And he has displayed his utmost stupidity by telling people to eat cassava. I mean,
Exactly.
it's ridiculous. Okay, if you people can't find food, eat cassava. Then the next thing is going to say, don't even eat cassava, go hungry. While his
Starved to
children
death.
are eating everything there is in the country and they are getting fat from the toes to the heads. That is ridiculous. I think you people in Uganda, the time of talking is over. The time of action is not even now, it is yesterday. We cannot tolerate this kind of nonsense. We just, and I'm glad some of our young people have started demonstrating because of this economic crisis we are in. This is how the French Revolution started. When the so-called bourgeoisie, let me stop there for a second. Bourgeoisie, the bourgeoisies of France were the ones enjoying the best in the country. And the
Yeah.
proletariat, the workers, the common man, were the ones eating nothing. And anybody who has studied the French Revolution would understand that there were two types of bread: the good bread and the bad bread. And they were sold in different shelves. When the common people came to buy the allotted type of bread, and they found that it had run away, or rather, it's all gone, but the stacks of the good bread for the bourgeoisies were still full. They told them, no, you go eat cassava, but don't touch this good bread. And that's how this thing started. And the women got so pissed off, they said, we're going to go for these, the heads of those bourgeoisies. And they created a
Yeah.
bulletin right there on the in Paris, and they started slaughtering them. Why don't people of Uganda do the same thing, for God's sake? This is the time to start a guillotine. If you can't on River Mayani, put it on Katonga or Nile. Because these so-called Batusi bourgeoisie don't deserve life in our country.
They're rather milking it. And we're going to go much further into how this is, as Mr. Kintu has said, the time of action is not even now, it was yesterday, and the momentum has yet again risen. It's on us to push it forward. So in that regard, I'll call on the producer to provide us with the next video, and then we're going to start looking at how, first of all, I would like to point out that even Museveni's definition of a worker, or who the workers are, and trying to quantify it and into numbers of who's valid worker or not, in itself is a false statement, as almost everyone, in Uganda, what is it they say? Like everyone is working to survive. You are doing some sort of, you're exchanging your labor as a commodity to survive in the nation. By that definition, whether you're in a trade union or not, you are a worker. So it's a nation of workers. But then when you have a man who cannot even define what a worker is, or who a worker is, and him himself, he's a civil servant, he's a president. I don't know if it's a civil servant, but Why doesn't the president work for the people? Museveni even gets you confused by the facts of that. Illegal, illegitimate, but he's supposed to be serving the people. So we'll go into the next video, and it's going to be talking about what's been happening behind with the coffee and how the government wants to monopolize. Actually, Kasaija had already signed to monopolize and give a monopoly to a coffee company that would take away this from the local coffee growers. So let's look into that aspect and then we'll continue.
The Trade Committee of Parliament had expected Enlika Pineti, the director of Uganda Vinci Coffee Company Limited, to appear and explain the agreement she entered into with government. However, Company Secretary Moses Matovu informed the committee that Pineti had been summoned at State House.
We have looked for her even when we had the issues of Ruoa. We looked for the woman or man, we never found her. We have the same problem, which is very serious to this country. We are looking for the person, is nowhere to be seen.
Before we could allow them to say something in regard to this, we need the person we invited. Unless somebody is going to say that, you see, you've been calling me Matovu, but I'm not Matovu, I'm Pineti.
Wouldn't it be procedural right to send the Musijiri to go back and look for the real person, and then we proceed?
That Mrs. Pineti is not a shareholder of the company. She is a director and the chair of the board of directors. She was meant to be with us this morning. Unfortunately, she was summoned to State House. And
can you receive the information, then you can decide.
As the standoff continued, the committee's lawyer told members that Matov, as the company secretary, can represent Pineti before the committee. When the session resumed, MPs learned that the investor has or is intending to mortgage 25 acres of land received freely from government at Namamve to raise funds to construct a coffee processing factory.
The letter says, request for consent to mortgage facility. The key words, we intend to mortgage the land to secure a credit facility to establish and operate this factory.
Okay, but
so what are you denying?
Probably this last agreement was what they were left with to process the mortgage. Or they already have the mortgage. But the fact is they intend to, because they already made a request and it was granted.
The document you have is permission to mortgage. It is not a mortgage. You will not find on our planet a mortgage deed signed by UVCC with any financier. You will not find any loan with any bank as at this time. So I confirm, Chair, we have never borrowed and we have never mortgaged the land.
You see,
MPs further found discrepancies in the dates when the Uganda Investment Authority authorized the company to get the mortgage.
The request for consent for the mortgage was written on 30th August 2018. And the reply was on 30 August 2018, which was the first. What came first was the UIA grant. Did it grant this mortgage offer before they requested? That is the clarification I'm seeking, Honorable Chair.
That mortgaging government land, if you're a foreign investor, you have to have developed 60% of the land, and the local investor 30%. And that once that is done and approved by the chief government valuer, then you can mortgage the land.
But this process was not followed.
Mr. Chairman, the process was followed for that time, but Mr. Chairman, the entities who are in charge of this are in the country, they can explain.
Earlier, the company secretary Moses Matovu had dispelled fears raised by MPs led by Abed Bwanika that the agreement sought to give the company monopoly over Uganda's coffee industry.
Now they went to force majeure and they say if there are issues which actually affect the company, the company is at liberty to cancel, not Uganda.
The committee should recommend cancelling of this agreement in the interests of the people of Uganda.
Why government chose to provide the support that it provided is because up to this point, no one has undertaken the kind of activity that UVCC is trying to undertake.
The committee investigations continue. Herbert Ziwa, NTV at Parliament.
So here we have an example of how, before we get into this video, I would request the producer to please play the next video, because this contract must have been signed by a member of parliament or so. So it was Kasaija who signed it, and let's see at the attitude at which they're addressing this, and then we shall come back and speak of those two videos in one go, because I want us to address how economically the state is being driven, whereby if State House has given the order for something to be done in terms of the economy that doesn't benefit the people, it's not even given a chance, or it's ignored, or people become very pompous about it. And the reporting of it shows us in daylight how this country is being run. If the producer can play the video of Kasaija dodging to attend these meetings and found at the canteen eating chicken, so that people understand the people who are behind these things, and there is no confusion on who is derailing the economy and draining and looting it.
The Parliamentary Committee of Trade and Tourism proceeded with the inquiry into the controversial coffee deal between the government of Uganda and the Uganda Vinch Coffee Company. The Minister of Finance, Matia Kasaija, who signed the agreement on behalf of the Parliament, made no show in the committee meeting today after snubbing the same committee yesterday. Now, the committee chairperson, Mwine Mpaka, says they're going to proceed ex parte and charge Kasaija with contempt of Parliament.
So Finance has adamantly refused to appear before the committee. In our recommendations, we are going to hold him in contempt of Parliament and make all the necessary recommendations.
For us as members, we have our own rules of procedure. We shall follow the rules of procedure and we shall continue writing to him. If he still fails to turn up, that shows that we have to go ahead with writing our report to the floor Parliament, and we present it to the people of Uganda to know whatever has taken place.
Committee members fumed to find Kasaija in the parliamentary canteen feasting on chicken, yet the Minister of Finance has been making excuses that the minister is too busy to attend committee meetings.
Receive the documents so we can process ex parte, since he has decided not to show up. Because today we have just been in a committee meeting and we found him in the canteen eating chicken, yet he was supposed to be in the committee.
And the letter delivered in his office, and the secretaries in his office received the letter and wrote in the parliamentary book. And therefore, the minister cannot plead ignorance of that letter. However, the same officials in the ministry yesterday told us that he could not come because there was a cabinet meeting. But today they said he could not come because he was away and preparing for for the caucus.
However, Kasaija defended himself, says he has not received any invitation from the Parliamentary Committee of Trade and Tourism.
I was not informed at all. Never.
They are saying they are going to...
I was not informed at all. Please give me a letter that was inviting me. Have you understood? Yes, I never got this.
That you are in contempt of Parliament?
Do I now smell? There are committees here which are going on every day here. Do I have to smell? You bring a letter for me.
Kasaija still defended the controversial coffee deal, saying it will play a vital role in promoting Uganda's coffee by enhancing value addition.
You are coffee. Who is not who's coffee? I am a coffee grower myself. How many acres have you grown?
I have 2.
Me, I have got 20. How come I'm not complaining?
Honorable Minister, you still...
How come me I'm not complaining?
Is the contract safe for me?
Me? Beneficial how? I'm looking for value addition to my coffee and get money. That's what I'm looking for. Yeah. And that's what that lady promised this country.
Meanwhile, the committee interacted with the organizations of coffee farmers and traders, including Uganda Coffee Federation, Uganda Coffee Farmers Alliance, Bugisu Cooperative Society, Uganda Large Scale Farms Association, Renzori Sustainable Trade Center Limited, and Uganda Quality Coffee Trader and Processors Association. Coffee farmers from different cooperatives have called for cancellation of the coffee agreement. They protested the deal, saying it's an existential threat to local companies which export and add value to coffee.
The agreement that was signed, Mr. Chairman, it says Vinci intends to have a production capacity of 60,000 metric tons of roasted coffee. Mr. Chairman, in the country is 7 million bags of 60 kilos each. So if you do a simple mathematics, you will find that we are producing about 420,000 metric tons of coffee. But out of this total production, Vinci, according to their production capacity, will be taking almost half of it. One company will be taking almost half of the entire country's production. This company is not operating in a free market. We have no problem Vinci buying all the coffee if they are competing freely with everybody else. But if they are protected by government, by being given the first option to buy, the first option to export, then it means that all the other companies, all the cooperatives, are going to go out of business.
Led by prominent coffee farmer Robert Kabshenga, coffee farmers dismissed the Vinci Coffee Company deal, saying the company is just masquerading as a coffee processor only to access Uganda's premium coffee for export.
Method of processing instant coffee called freeze drying. It's high end. That is the one that consumes where you could go for the higher grade beans. What they mean by, so in coffee production, the highest quality bean you will ever produce is what is called screen size 18. That is the best. For Arabica, 18 for Robusta. And that is what fetches the highest amount of money in the export market, and it's processed in a different way. So what this agreement should have said is, if you want to take our premium grade coffees, the investment you should be making in the country is of freeze-dried coffee. The moment you go into that area, the money should shift from $80 million and start to go into the hundreds of millions of dollars.
They even challenged the legality of the coffee agreement, saying the Minister of Finance does not have powers to give tax incentives to any company without approval of Parliament.
Look at the tax exemptions granted in this agreement versus what Parliament passed in 2017. In 2017, Parliament consolidated all the tax incentives, because before 2017 we used to have agreements. BIDCO is an example, but the government brought a legislation to say that whoever needs tax exemptions and incentives, please access them through the Income Tax Act, through the laws. So, and that's why I'm saying laws must be publicly promulgated. You don't access incentives through agreement.
The committee chairperson Mpaka threatened to wage a raid on Vinci offices to dig up all documents needed to beef up the probe.
He didn't show up. She directed someone to represent her, that is the company secretary. And I can confirm up to this afternoon, the company secretary was at police at Parliament. He has refused to give us the necessary documents. We are going to process a search warrant, go to their offices and take all the necessary documents we need.
This report was compiled by Fred Kajubi for the news.
So, Mr. Kintu, what we see right now is the level of not only confusion, but unapologetically not explained. So in the previous video, of course, Museveni talked about how he has made the members of parliament write their opinions on the coffee deal, and how every time people have their things in writing, they'll run out of ways to defend their position on this coffee issue. So just a question, so how people really understand where the nation is going if this ruling class is not overturned? It seems like priority contracts are being saved up for international or foreign corporations that will have a direct linkage only with people in the state house. and people working for the State House, not even the Parliament. As we can see, Honorable Kasaija just signed the deal and doesn't even want to be involved in being questioned, but is rather dodging invitations to this. So, what message, what kind of economic syndicate are we going to be seeing play on replay? Because it has a trickling down effect, especially and then I'll ask another question on that. What can we do to overturn this when the time does come? What can we do as of yesterday to now in order to call further attention to the economic deterioration that is happening within the nation?
As a matter of fact, you find it very difficult to pinpoint where to start on this issue. I have listened to the coverage they have put out. First of all, you look at a man called Kabushenga pretending to be the coffee farmer or coffee grower or representing the coffee growers. Anybody born in Uganda knows that coffee is what made Masaka district famous and rich. Coffee is what, Arabica coffee is what made Bugishu famous and rich. And all these areas had cooperative unions. We had Bwavu Mporogoma in Masaka and the Masaka Union. We had East Mengo Cooperative. We had Busoga Cooperative. We had Bugishu cooperatives. And they processed their coffee. Now you hear in this presentation that they have allocated Namam, which is a natural forest area, for this stupid woman, wherever she came from, to build a coffee processing factory. Now, that's a double-edged sword. You are destroying Namave as a forest, natural forest, which is literally destroying the environment of Uganda, and you want to build a coffee processing. Now, how can you tell me you're going to build a coffee processing in Namave to process what? Coffee made, grown in Chagwe? Because that is not going to process coffee grown all over the country, which is, in Buganda, in Bugishu, and Ankole. The next thing I heard was this man calling himself the lawyer for the coffee farmers, Mr. Frank Agimara. I don't even know where he comes from. Now you are seeing a Kabushenga representing the coffee farmers and a Gimara being their lawyer. And all these are belonging to that group of hyenas. Now, excuse me. To me, these guys, and even Kashaija, who is hiding somewhere eating fried chicken instead of doing his official duty when he's summoned to parliament, is a true definition of what the Portuguese call estás domado. Some people would say totally brainwashed, but I would go a step further. This is a display of total nullity. There is nothing in their heads. And one of these days, these are the people who have to pay the price. We cannot waste our time discussing this kind of kangaroo group who are nothing but a mafia. Whatever they have said is total garbage, because nothing is coordinated, nothing makes sense, nothing even appeals to the ground where things are going on. The people of Uganda had their cooperatives, they grow coffee, they processed it, and they sold it through the Coffee Marketing Board. And they made money and were able to educate us as their children. And this is what we should be looking at. This is how you develop a country. When the producers of coffee can sell their product and make the maximum they can get out of it and be able to support their families and nobody would complain. But that's what these thieves from Rwanda have done to our country. They have stolen everything. And then they are telling us to go eat muogo, which is total nonsense. That's an insult to us as Ugandans. And we should not tolerate it, not even for a day.
From back in the days, it was a witness report, and in it, Uganda had written like people would go to get school fees from their local villages, from the farm, from the money that their families had earned through the trade of the products that were being farmed on their family land. And that is no longer, people are moving to the cities just to rack up money to pay for the exchange of goods and commodities. It makes you wonder where the economy is going. It's being taken further and further away from the hands of the natives, and they're being left high and dry. But as we go further into that, because now we're going to start to look at how this mafia syndicate is starting to affect. Because thank you very much, Mr. Kintu, for bringing that up. Because when we watched these videos, what was very interesting, not once do you see a local coffee farmer, but you have representatives upon representatives being paraded around in this whole issue. It's representatives upon representatives being paraded around to represent not only the views, but the interest of a whole group of people that we have not seen in its physical manifestation stand up and rise up for the reversal of this deal. So I'll call on the producer to show the last video, and this is going to be a submission from it's a submission from the union leaders or representatives of coffee growers. But also another question that I had among that, is it the local coffee growers that are complaining, or is it the group of the mafias who have locally managed to enrich themselves off of a local monopoly of coffee growing versus foreign investment? So if the producer could please play that video.
In their presentation to the Parliamentary Committee on Trade, Industry and Tourism, the coffee subsector players and industry analysts poked holes in the agreement the government has committed the country into, describing it as mortgaging the coffee commodity as well as the entire sector, despite being one of the leading foreign exchange earners and supporting the livelihoods of about 12 million Ugandans.
The major purpose of this agreement is to enable that this company is going to help us to export value-added powder, value-added coffee. But when you look at the articles therein, this company is allowed to export raw beans, So the original objective of the agreement of exporting value-added coffee can't be achieved when you look at what's provided for.
For me, let us get out of it painfully, and for the rest of the time we are free and we take lessons. Never, never, never to commit sectors that mean a lot to our economy, that mean a lot to our people.
Despite the critique of the agreement, the coffee sector regulator, the Uganda Coffee Development Authority, sees nothing wrong with the deal, saying as long as it promotes value addition, that is all that matters.
I want to explain here that we are not coming to defend Binch Coffee because we have nothing to do with them. We are defending value addition in the coffee sector. Whoever can do it, we go by that.
If there was any good intentions and even dividends in the infamous coffee agreement, it is increasingly looking too late to redeem, as one stakeholder after another only shoots it down. Ismail Musa, Ladu, NTV, Business.
What I find very interesting about all of this, as all this has risen to national concern and has been covered by the media, what has been ignored is that, first of all, you have Katana, who is he's the one who's representing Ugandans against Museveni in the electoral petition, but now also Kabushenga, who has been in the public service under the same regime is now the one that is actually representing Ugandans, Ugandan coffee farmers. So continuously, we continue to see it's because this is why I found interesting about the coffee deal and the people who are representing for the coffee deal. There has not been one indigenous coffee farmer from the regions that you mentioned, Masaka, Bugishu, Ankole, come up and voice out their concerns about the coffee deal. However, it happens to say within a certain cluster of people or group of people who do not even represent, who represent again the interests of a specific class that doesn't include the indigenous Ugandans. And I wanted us to even be keen about that as we discuss the concerns that are being brought about by the coffee deal and who, when it's resolved, shall benefit, because they win either way. They win if the foreign government, a foreign agency takes over coffee production, and they also win if the local farmers are given more power or more drive through this agreement, if they get to collaborate more with the international corporation and more. So in my thinking, it's a syndicate where they win either way. They can make more money from the foreigners who are coming to make deals with Ugandan people, but they are the representation on that level and will still be the primary beneficiaries. And if the foreigner gets the contract, they will also yet again be the primary beneficiaries. So I just wanted us to speak on that, Mr. Kintu. Where
Yes.
How do we start to detangle this?
This era of, you call them mafia, I would call them maggots and the flies. Wherever they congregate, nothing good comes out of there. And they are the people who are pretending to be representing the coffee farmers, people pretending to be the lawyers of coffee farmers, people presenting to be the representatives of coffee farmers. None of them is any of that they pretended to be representing. So they are imposters par excellence, with total empty heads about what they are trying to do. And that's why I call it a display of absolute nudity, because that's what they are. They have invented some catchwords like investors. That word investors, sometimes they make it sound as if these are angelic messengers of goodness, which is not true. And they have also added in some nice words like they are coming to help us add value to how. Did we ask you to come and help us? I mean, you cannot come to my house and say, I'm coming to help you unless I have called you. And we can handle that. We've been handling it for more than 50 years. We processed our coffee, added on value. We can even roast it and sell it roasted and grinded, ready to be put in a kettle and drink a coffee. We don't need anybody from outside. And this so-called mafia woman they paraded in, Miss Penetti from Italy, I don't know whether she's actually Italian, because some people say she's a Libyan. None of those people know how to grow coffee. So this is the job which should be left to us as coffee growers who know how to grow coffee, who know how to roast it, who know how to process it. But the Ugandans have been pushed totally outside. And these imposters have moved in and they have taken over. It's a total mafia operation which has to be fought and thrown out in the incinerator, because they are not supposed to be allowed to move around on this in our country. I insist to my fellow Ugandans, this is not going to be tolerated. Unfortunately, some of our people feel comfort when they see the parliament scream. And I have listened to some parliamentarians, but I want to quote what Mr. Kyagulanyi once said when he came to Washington, D.C. He said, for lack of better words, the Uganda parliament is impotent. And that's what they are. They might talk and scream. That's why that crook could say, I don't give a damn. I'm not going to go there even if they summon me, because I know they are impotent. They cannot do anything to me. I am untouchable. I belong to the murderous ruling mafia of thieves. So I'm safe. And Kasaija is right. He's safe. You can do anything since you are parliamentarians who belong to that camp of people who can't do anything. So why should he bother? Let him go enjoy his fried chicken. And from that, he might end up going down to Kisenyi and enjoy some malayas.
Yeah. And people must remember that the parliament is not going to deliver anything. And from that note, we will then go to who is actually being affected. And because many people think maybe we're going to watch two videos. We're going to watch two videos of skyrocketing prices, but one is going to be based in Kampala and what's happening in Kampala. But this is not only happening in Kampala, it's all over the country. People must come to understand that it's not just, it's happening all over the nation, for prices have risen to unbearable rates. So we're going to look at two ones from Chigezi and the other ones from Kampala, how people are having to deal with the prices of day-to-day commodities. And also keep in mind that most of these companies that produce soap, that produce sugar, they are all owned by the same people. We've known this because during elections, we were busy boycotting all of Museveni's companies and Museveni's family and friends' companies. And they own all of these things, from the ones that do sugar, salt, bar of soap, and then Museveni comes and tells you it's because of Ukraine and oil. So let us watch these two videos and then we'll come back.
The escalating commodity prices have left the public pondering what the future holds. This is coupled with the ascension of fuel prices, which directly affects transport. Among those severely affected are low salary earners, whose remuneration cannot sustain their needs.
How are you?
Now, a section of workers' representatives in different trade unions are advocating for a salary increment for the workers by government and private entities to match the increase in prices.
Ordinarily, the salaries of these workers cannot even enable them to meet the very basic needs of life defined by the International Labour Organization, ILO. That include food, housing, medical care, and clothing. As such, the rise in prices on goods and services is an injury to an already existing wound.
However, some employers also claim that the high prices have affected their businesses, with a possible layoff of some workers if no relief is got from government.
The consumer is not willing to pay more because they are coming out of a COVID-19 crunch. They are on the road to recovery, so they are unable or unwilling to pay more. So what this means is that businesses have to downsize, businesses have to go back internally and see, maybe we have to rationalize the number of employees we have. Maybe we have to decrease the number of benefits we are giving to the people.
To give a passionate and considerate hand to private schools in this country. They are already overwhelmed by the cost of operating their schools. They must be helped, because what they are doing is a function that should otherwise be done by the government.
According to Robert Wanzusi, the chairperson of Global Workers and Environmental Works Network, it is this time that unionization comes in handy.
Trade unions are not functioning in all workplaces. But employers there should know very well that they are employing people who are not satisfied. And you don't need to be a genius to know that these workers who are working for me are facing difficulties because these conditions are seen everywhere.
Unionization is a good theoretical idea, but for small businesses that are struggling to keep themselves afloat, the least of their worries is unionizing. We do not want to exploit workers, but at the same time, we don't want workers to hold us at ransom because they want all kinds of benefits from the business. Because by doing that, they'll kill the business. So there has to be balance. Workers must also understand that businesses are going through a difficult time.
Trade unionism is legal. So if you are guilty, that's the only reason why you are afraid to unionize. The guilty are always afraid.
The workers' representatives have also vowed to name and shame employers, especially investors, who don't respect workers' rights.
So whoever chooses to come and invest in this country must also choose to respect the citizens of this country.
There are employers who abuse workers' rights in workplaces. But these employers are also having godfathers. These godfathers aid them to abuse workers' rights. When godfathers are aiding them, they don't care what happens on the ground.
Ali Mivole, NTV.
Before we go deeply into that video, I would like for the producer to please play the second video from Chigezi as well.
Continuous skyrocketing prices of essential commodities is currently a big talk and an itching factor all over the country. The high costs of essential household commodities such as soap, cooking oil, foods like maize flour, rice among others, is worrying, and most of the locals ask government to take action and stop the rising prices. The parish priest at a Catholic parish in Kabale Diocese, Father Gitan Batanyenda, blames the continuous increase of commodity prices to the crisis of fuel in the country, saying that leaders who would spearhead the ideas to solve this emergency are not being affected because their vehicles and the fuel they use is all free.
No, ba MP bitu, ba minister bitu. Emutu kazi baravuga nezabo nanga nezitu. Nezaba, nezitu, nezitu zitu. Amashito akubara ravuga, nibagashashulira. Buni bavuga kabo, gakunda gagengere, gakunda kaseni agabogole. Shuwale ikintu cha fuel prices. Nekintu samunonga abanya-Uganda yokukyalo kige kyensi yona ngonda gambira abanya-Uganda abundi nabo nekintu kyenako konko ubulemezi bwingi ni abebezi bitu bo ebya crisis y'amajuta tibakamira.
Some of the local leaders in Kabale district are also confused about the answers they are to give the people they lead about such a crisis in the country.
There is the inflation in our things. So you can
see now, so the bar of soap is at 8,000 shillings, and the salt is 1,000 shillings, and people behind are crying. They don't have any money to buy soap, to buy maize flour, to buy salt. So I urge the government really to reduce on prices for the well-being of people behind the villages.
The State Minister of Trade, Industries and Cooperatives, Honorable David Bahati, says that the government has admitted that the country is facing an inflation situation at the moment. He adds on that this situation has been brought up by the 2 years of the COVID-19 pandemic that affected the supply chain at a global level, among other factors.
The issue of the price increase, inflation, and as we made a statement in the House the other day, we talked about the causes of this. Basically, this comes out of the 2 years of COVID pandemic that we have had that affected the supply chain at the global level. A container which used to take 1 month, it has now been taking 3 months. This increases the cost of production, and this cost of production also goes into the consumer price.
Minister Bahati continues to say that they are aware of such a situation and looking forward to hold a meeting chaired by President Museveni soon to discuss about the possible solutions of this issue.
There are also issues to do with the fuel prices, partly because of speculation. Even when all these other things have been normalized, we continue to see the pump price up. So we as government, as His Excellency the President said, we are going to meet with the caucus, in addition to the settlement we had, and look at the solution that we can have in terms of fuel prices, in terms of how can we reduce and facilitate the reduction of the cost of raw materials to produce the essential goods at the house level, like soap and salt.
Public transport fares have also been revised due to the increase of fuel prices, making the journey from Kabale to Mbarara being adjusted from 20,000 to 25,000, Kabale Ntungamo from 10,000 to 15,000, Kabale Rukunjiri from 20,000 to 25,000, Kabale Chisizi from 10,000 to 15,000, Kabale Kasese from 30,000 to 40,000, Kabale Kisolo from 15,000 to 20,000, Kabale Chii from 15,000 to 20,000, and Kabale Katuna from 5,000 to 7,000. Nobati Ngamachi for Chigezi Television.
Oba yasitembesa nemo abantu mu kyalo ekyokulya byanyu hati abantu babyitwalira kuruga rubanda kuza kabali agomutwalo baziza kuri mutwali.
So that is the situation. We're now starting to see the ripple down effects and the economic stance at which Uganda is in. What's very ironic and not even funny about the situation, we produce oil, and with skyrocketing fuel prices, if we had a functioning government, this should be something for us to fall back on. We produce, as he had said, Museveni had said, we produce almost everything within the nation, but even in an economic crisis, nothing is to show that we are actually our own producers. But now I want us to talk about the atmosphere that is rising yet again. I want us to change the discussion and start to look at the atmosphere that is rising in within the nation and the wave that us in the diaspora can support and be one with people back home. The economic situation has brought yet again another wave of, it's not only a wave of anger, but justified fury, not only towards the ruling class, but towards the performance of politics per status quo. It starts to present an age within Ugandan politics that is not based off of politics in terms of the parliament and elections, but yet we're seeing the workers in Uganda rise up to challenge the status quo. And I wanted us to phrase this last segment of our show on that. And if you're watching this and you would like to call in with your views and questions, now would be a good time. The producer is going to put the number on there. But for this last segment, Mr. Kintu, I wanted us to talk about how critical this workers' movement is going to be in terms of our revolution especially when we think of our revolution through federalization of indigenous nations within Uganda to better serve and give the means of production back to the people, how we can groom and be a part of this wave of workers' rebellion that seems to be building up in Uganda at this moment. It's not based off of any political parties or affiliations, but rather it's built off of the necessity that workers and civilians and the natives of Ugandan of the natives of Uganda need to be provided, need an economy that provides for them and that can produce, can be a safe place to live in and exist and be able to see the next coming day. How can we groom this and be a part of this, or pick up the momentum that's been laid for us by our fellow citizens back home to amplify and create more visibility around this?
You are right. You have said that if we had a working government, it's very unfortunate we do not have a working government, and we do not even have a government. We have a group of, call them mafia, call it a bunch of one family of Batusi that has raided our country and taken over, and they are eating and chewing everything they found. They are not different from, what do you call them, locusts. Any of you who has seen locusts raid an area, they eat every leaf there is, whether it is the banana leaves or bisagazi or any grass that is available. They chew them, and by the time they leave, everything has been left as skeletons. That's what we have. We have a bunch of grasshoppers that flew in without a visa from Kigali and have eaten everything, and they are still eating. And we are sitting there watching them as they eat and consume everything. Now, one of the problems these people have done to our countries is their criteria for being in any position is only based on the value that you are Mtusi, okay? They have no value in the country. They have no value in performance. They have no value in delivering services. Imagine me, I'm a Catholic. If you appoint me to be head of Chibuli Mosque, what do you expect me to deliver to the Muslim population that is in Kibuli as their mosque or their headquarters? I know nothing about Kibuli. I know nothing about Islam. I know nothing about the Quran, and yet you expect me to run Kibuli? I will fail it to the ground. That's what these people have done. To make it even look different, I'm an economist and a teacher by training. Now, if you put me at Mulago and they say I'm going to be in charge of that hospital, I know nothing of. I can't even give you an injection. I'll be panicking even to put a band-aid on your wound because I'm scared of looking at an open wound. But you expect me to run Mulago Hospital? Heck no. That's what these people have done. And we have allowed them by being silent or being aloof, as if ebyo tebinkwatako tubirekere bali. That is nonsense. There is nobody to leave it to. It is you and me. We are the ones who have to be in charge. And we should stand up as Ugandans and defend our country. And we do. We have to put people who are qualified and capable and have also demonstrated a willingness to serve. That is what we have been advocating, and that is where the federal system of government, live and let live, comes in, where people are in charge. The coffee growers are going to be in charge of growing their coffee, processing it, marketing it, and selling it overseas, if they have to sell it overseas, or process it, roast it, and grind it, and they sell it to the consumers wherever they are, whether local or overseas. Each region is going to take care of itself. Let them take care of their local problems or local issues, because no matter what one says, every human being is a producer and a consumer. Each one of you is a producer and a consumer. You produce what you can grow or what you can make, or you produce your professional services. At the same time, you are a consumer of what the other people are producing, making, or the services they can provide. And there is no in between. Everyone has two roles. We are producers and consumers. And what we do has to be given the dignity that it deserves, not to be looked at as this idiot was talking about a few minutes ago. I'm a bourgeoisie. To hell with being a bourgeoisie. You ain't nothing but a thief and a murderer and a liar. That's what you are. And it is unfortunate that these people have crystallized their evil behavior into being leaders of Uganda or sitting on Uganda and destroying. Now Uganda is suffocating and rotting every single minute we are talking. That is why I said the time for action is not today, it is yesterday. The only thing we as Ugandans have to do is to rise up and defend ourselves and defend our country. Now, we have seen some demonstrations, those protests you have shown from Kabale and any other places. Those of us who look at the wider angle of the oppressed people, and by the way, before I go into that, I want to quote what I have learned in my faith, that even Jesus said, where there is an oppressor and an oppressed, I am on the side of the oppressed. So any of you people, don't panic, don't be scared. Even God is on your side, because God is on the side of the oppressed, not the oppressor. So don't be scared. That's why I say the time for action is not today, but yesterday. We have seen demonstrations. We have seen rebellions. We have seen people who are defending their rights to live like they had in Egypt, in Sudan, in Kazakhstan, and many other countries. It is amazing. Those of you who remember the Egyptian uprising, it's amazing. You found the university students, you found the professors, you found the religious leaders, you found the traders, you found the taxi drivers, you found the farmers, all participating as comrades in defending their humanity. Contrast that with what we have in Kampala or Kabale. How many university students, how many university professors, how many religious leaders, how many traders? Well, now the traders are mostly these characters that crossed our border. How many taxi drivers or border drivers? How many farmers have been joining hands or joining hooks with the rest of the Wananchi to protest this oppression, to protest this highway robbery, to protest our murdering our children, our brothers and sisters? How many? I would want to see a picture that shows presentation from all these groups of people I've mentioned, other than the picture of those hooligans who went to State House to praise Museveni after he has killed even their fellow Muslims. This is where we have a problem, my countrymen. This is what we got to rise up for. Because what hurts this person in Kabale, what hurts this student in Kampala, what hurts this Karamajong being slaughtered like flies, hurts me because I am my brother's keeper. Short of that, don't blame anybody else, but blame yourselves because you have failed to do your part. Why some of us are standing up and talking like this? Definitely, me in my little house where I am now, I'm comfortable and safe. The Maryland police protects this area. Nobody's going to touch this area. But I feel hurt when I see someone in Karamoja being killed, when I see someone in Kivu being killed, when I saw the people in Kigali being butchered by these Tutsis. I feel hurt. I can't be comfortable. Why don't you? Where is your humanity? Where is your Christianity, for God's sake? Where is your Islam faith, as we are all brothers? Because even our brothers, the Muslims, they have that brotherhood. Where is it? When people like Sheikh, what is his name, was butchered last, when they stood up and they tried to defend our humanity, and you turn around and go to Entebbe to shake hands with a murderer, shame on you. Shame on you. And I don't want to provoke trouble, but I would say, if I was a Muslim, that bastard wouldn't come to my mosque today. I would kick him out. And I think I would be right.
Stars have
We
been,
have to defend.
yeah. We have been betrayed by so many people who we've walked paths with. We're talking about a nation where the whole parliament that was elected by people, if not by many, they rallied people to go to the polling stations in the midst of immense violence. And right when these ministers reach in the parliament, they start to serve the oppressor. So we have been betrayed time and time again by not only the system, but by the people who enable this system to work. Enablers of this regime are everywhere. And you're not wrong to say that they would not be invited to the mosque, because a lot of people are choosing the easy way out. And to many, it might be easy for you to say, while I sit outside of the country and so far away and with assumed safety, it still does not change the fact that these people have risen in presenting themselves as leaders or as guiders or as people who have similarly aligned interests as the people. And as soon as an opportunity shows itself for them not to align with the people anymore and choose the easy route for them, for their continuous gaining of resources or just crumbs of the big cake, they will align themselves with the oppressor. So the whole nation doesn't serve the people. But to your point on when will people begin to rise up, I think it's within these few weeks that with the skyrocketing prices, we're starting to see people in different sectors start to rise up. We must note that this is not going to be heavily reported by the regime, as Museveni controls everything down to the airing out of news. But I want the producer to please play a video of the students to this week that has just ended. Students of 4 different universities, all the way from Chambogo, Makerere, rose up and said these prices are ridiculous. These prices, we cannot go on any longer with these prices. It's expensive for us to continue to live in a nation of this sort. And students were rising up to that. I hear that the nurses and the union nurses, they have also given an ultimatum, and they cannot continue like this. And it's a countdown. The last I had, it was 10 days to go. But the problem that we're having is coordination of this being something that's organized in synchrony, but you're having very many different sectors start to rise up. So how do we join onto this momentum? But I'll ask the producer to first play that video of the students that were arrested for protesting the skyrocketing prices. Their protest was, they were arrested by the state police.
Kozesa muntu kubaako kye yeegulira. Twagala ebbeeyi y'ebintu ekwatibwe. Price must fall. Price must fall. Zino ensonga zikosa nnyo naddala abazadde baffe. Zino prices ziba zitunyigiriza naffe okubeera ku university tubadde tusobola kweyongerayo. Bano babadde bakutte ebipande ebiriko obubaka obw'enjawulo obuwakanya ebbeeyi y'ebintu wamu n'okuyimba ennyimba ez'enjawulo ng'ate bagasseeko n'okwesiba ennyegere. Bano abatandikidde ku Kampala Road okutuuka ku Parliamentary Avenue babadde baliko ekiwandiiko kye babaze n'ekigendererwa kukitwala wa Speaker wa Parliament Anita Among n'akulira oludda oluvuganya gavumenti Mathias Mpuuga okuwaayo okwemulugunya kwabwe n'ensonga ez'enjawulo ze bagamba nti ke kaseera gavumenti ezikoleko. We are here protesting non-violently, telling the right honourable speaker, telling the leader of opposition, arrest the prices of commodity now. Okumpi ne Parliament poliisi we basaliddeko era nabo kwe kusalawo okutuula mu luguudo wakati ensiitaano weetandikidde okubajja mu luguudo kubanga babadde beesibye enjegere ate nga buli omu anywezezza munne. Wano ababaka ba Parliament nabo we baviiriddeyo. Bano bavumiridde ekikolwa kya poliisi okukwata abaana bano mu ngeri etali nnungi kibagambye nti kimenya mateeka.
Abayizi bano bazze mu kifo ekituufu, bazze ku Parliament, tebazze mu katale. So kitegeeza nti tewali alina bakwatako kubanga bazze mu kifo ekituufu amaloboozi gaabwe mwe galina okuwulirizibwa. Singa babadde bagenze mu katale poliisi yandibagaanye naye bazze ne petition yaabwe ffe nga babaka ba Parliament tugamba tugenda girisiivinga. Sabbuuni takyagulikako abaana b'obuwala bafuusa abaana abatasobola kwenaaza oba kweyonja mu mbeera eno gye tutambuliramu. We bajja ku Parliament babasuubira eddembe lyabwe lijja kukuumibwa kuba Parliament fe abasooka okukuuma amateeka mu ggwanga lino Uganda. Ng'abaana bagenda okutandika okusoma olwaleero bakandisa olwaleero abaana bali ku university ng'ebikozesebwa biri waggulu ng'abaana beekozeemu omulimu baleete petition. Gwe poliisi lwaki abaana obakwata mu mbeera efaanana bw'etyo? Poliisi ya Parliament eremereddwa okumalawo embeera eno era yeeyungiddwako abakkakkanya obujagalalo okuva ku kitebe kya poliisi mu Kampala. Kyokka abayizi basigadde ku lumu nga bayimba ennyimba kwe bagasa okwekkokola gavumenti ya Uganda gye bagamba nti esaanye okulabira ku mawanga amalala agatuliraanye omuli Kenya n'amalala engeri gye byakolamu n'okukwatamu ensonga y'ebbeeyi y'ebintu okulinnya. Kenya we beevuddeyo n'egamba nti bo bagenda kwongeza ku bazadde omusaala abaana baabwe basobole okusoma. Waliwo incentives nnyingi ze baba ba students be Kenya ate nga tuli mu gundi yeerimu naye wano batugamba bugambye ekintu kimu nti oba tosobola mugaati genda olye muwogo kikyamu.
As we can see the situation in Uganda, what's very interesting is in Uganda, before anything happens, they build up momentum and tell us to heavily invest in our leaders, that they're going to resolve all the problems that we have. But once then the problems start to come to the surface and become a reality, because they're already a reality, but once they get the momentum to be at the surface at the national level, newsworthy, not that even newsworthy, but once they become a day-to-day living, then the politicians are nowhere to be seen. Then it is a sad reality but also the questions that I had around this and what I wanted us to discuss about this, Mr. Kintu, is this momentum that has been. I want to also mention that when the students went to protest, they were manhandled by the police. Let's understand that the police continues to work the way how the mafia or the junta wants it to work. They were manhandled, especially two female students, and then they were taken in, and then they had to go to court the next day. First of all, taken in by the police for no crimes committed. So the status quo of police misuse and the state using police stays in place in Uganda. And on top of all of that, however, this rising up of the different sectors in however way they're choosing to rise up is starting to signify uh, a stance that we in the diaspora must also stand on with the people back home. So I guess the question I had for you for our discussion today, how do we pick up momentum and change how we're having conversations and start to refocus our revolution, of course embedded in federacy, but also looking at the problems that we have now and start to voice from that standpoint as one, instead of doing what we've been regularly doing, waiting for inefficient politicians to come and resolve national issues that never get resolved but pushed into the next election.
It's a good question. First of all, let us look at this. You mentioned a parliament, but we don't have a parliament. We have a parliament. What we have is a group of self-seekers who have been elected to sit in that honorable building, pretending to be lawmakers, but they end up being rubber stamping whatever the junta throws down their throat. Now, when you look at the members of parliament, you mentioned the word elected, which I have good problem with, because a good many of them were not elected. They stole the elections. Museveni has set up a system whereby he designs who will sit in that building and who will not sit in that building. Now, in the first place, you have over 500 members of parliament. The Western region has about 290 something members. That is more than 50% of the MPs sitting in that building. And if you look at the Western region, the area of Ankole and Chigezi is taken over by Banyarwanda, Ugandans. Okay? And then the other people are the ones whom Museveni has tamed thoroughly. He has tamed them thoroughly. These are the people I have said they display nullity. They are empty-headed. You cannot expect anything out of them. Then you look at areas like Buganda, which has a very small percentage of representatives, and they make sure that anybody with a balanced head cannot even stand to contest. And they make sure that they push people who are totally useless to be in that building, pretending to represent Buganda. And they have done that even in the northern region and western region, eastern region. A good example, we had a Uganda member of parliament who just recently traveled overseas and looked at the snow and they called it ebitomi byebulaya byeru. There is no better display of elementary stupidity and backwardness as this guy is. And he was a member of parliament. What do you expect out of such a bloody nincompoop? Nothing. So look at the parliamentarians who stood out there during this students' demonstration. In Uganda, we call it okwekangabaza. I don't know a better word in English, but they just stand there pretending we are members of parliament. They have brought this, but you can't even clean your own behind. You are totally useless. The only thing they are doing is milk that or whatever millions they get. That's what they went there for. And when Museveni says, I want this, they say, yes, sir, boom, and they rubber stamp it. So we have no parliament, honestly. That thing has to be thrown in the trash the next day, when the day comes. The Honorable Speaker, I don't want to use the word honorable because that woman doesn't deserve to be honorable. She ain't it. If I could borrow that American street language. She ain't it. She's not honorable. Look at how she became a speaker. Look at, she just doesn't deserve to be called honorable. And they are misusing their position to enrich themselves. The rebellion is going to go on, and we, the people in the diaspora, have to give it the support we can. And this rebellion should go beyond the students, the nurses, the doctors, the teachers, the border drivers, the traders, and the farmers should stop selling food to feed these hooligans in the city. And the people should stop buying from these invaders' stores because they own most of the businesses. And that is when a rebellion is going to be a real rebellion. And we can bring this regime down to its, to its knees. We have to, and we must. We must bring this regime to its knees and kick them out. It is that simple. And we can do it. But screaming, as I said the other day in Uganda, that ekikolimo ky'enkoko tekitta kamunye. You cannot curse the devil. You cannot curse the killers. You have to act and take action. That is the only option. And there is no shortcut to that. Now, anybody who thinks is going to waste our time looking at many reasons why we shouldn't or why we can't, I would say maybe you're working for the enemy. Because yes, we can and we will.
Or us. So before we start listening to any questions or comments, I would like for this one last video to be played by the producer. It's a video of Museveni's son-in-law speaking about how the future for Ugandans, what lies ahead. Sometimes we bring these things so that we remember and put ourselves in the context of the reality we're in. Let us not forget why we're here, because we're not here just to pass time and provide information, but this information is supposed to take us into a certain state of reorganizing ourselves to actually fight this system, to tear it down. But before we do that, we must know who we're fighting and why. So we're going to play a video from Rabo, just explaining how he envisions. And let us keep in mind, this is a member of the ruling class. These things he says, he does not say them just to pass time. He does not say them without backing. He says them and he means it. So let's take these things for the seriousness that they are and stop joking with any futurity we have left as a people.
Of the power should be from one region. The wealth should be from one region. The rest should be either puppets or employees. And at best, they would better be slaves. That is the new Uganda we need. We need a dynasty, a very serious dynasty. I know His Excellency doesn't like these things, these ideologies. Doesn't want these ideologies, but I'm not alone with such an ideology. We are going to seize education and health completely. We become part of it. Then we end up in agriculture, in the Premier's office. We control the refugees and all of those. Then we extend beyond all boundaries and make sure that we are the people in charge of each and every aspect. Then we go to the private enterprises. Baganda are very sharp people. They're very good businessmen. They can survive even with the smallest amount of money. That is their talent. We are not there. So let them do the donkey work. We do the prince's job. Let us be the kings. Our children will be the prince, the princess and the princesses. Then let the rest be the subjects. I'm talking about business. The subjects will toil, to do the work to sustain the kingdom. So whatever they do will be for.
Kumala okuwuliza ebyo ne weewuunya lwaki ekisajja kino kyeyiga kikwata abakazi ne kibba ebintu by'abantu nga kikumbibwa military police ne kikuba obutambi ne kyofuma ne kabaka ne kivuma naani.
We must remember that what we have is a reactionary group that is invested. Actually, before I even comment, we'll show the last video for today's show. This is how parents are having to, first thing we'll take care of is the education. So now parents can no longer afford to take their students to schools that are meant to be bonabasome. So we'll watch this last video and we'll come back and hopefully we start to realize that this dynasty that they wish for has been long into action to be placed into the nation. And it's working for them. So we'll watch this last video. And then after this last video, we'll come back we'll come back just for the final commentary. But before we actually watch this video, I want to just draw attention to nothing Rabogo said is not actually happening in Uganda. A lot of people are in denial for the reality, but how can you deny something from happening when an insider even tells you this is the plan? And it's not just any insider, this is the son-in-law to Museveni. It's not a random person who you cannot associate with a group of people. Is one who has not only been associated with that group of people, but also one who has married into the state house and the family, and is a member of this family. So Mr. Kintu, I guess for you, because this thing you've done research on and you've presented to us on several occasions, when you watch this video and we think about for how long people have denied that this is a reality versus the contrast in this video, and with the confidence, the insensitivity that Rabogo speaks with what trajectory are we to organize ourselves to really start to make it sink into people's heads that this is the context in which we find ourselves, and this is where we must attack the dynasty from.
Thank you for that comment. Rabogo has used the word we. We is a plural and a very wide. Who is we he's referring to? Now you all know, and we have said this over and over, that Rabogo is related to David Louis Rubongoya, who is Secretary General of NUP. And This is the man who is responsible for selling our people and taking internal body organs, selling them to Middle East or wherever they are selling them. Of course, first of all, they kill them and they get the kidneys and all those internal organs and sell them and make millions of dollars for themselves. And that is Rwabogo. And he's saying we. Now, he has also made it clear that we are the ruling class. And that in that case is very right, because they are the ruling class. You recall not too long ago, there was a funeral of the mother of Katana, who is the treasurer and the legal advisor to Bobby Wine. And in Bobby Wine's speech, he referred to Katana as a person who belongs to the privileged class, a ruling class. And we know that Katana is related to James Kabarebe, the killer, the murderer of Rwanda and the Congo. And when Rwabogo says, I am not alone in thinking this way, he is right, because he is even supported by our own Mr. Chagulanyi, who said it at that funeral, that Katana belongs to the privileged class. So we have a very, very big problem in our country. We have traitors within our own camp, and we have enemy all around our house. Where do you start? We have a very serious problem. There are people who are pretending not to see it. There are people who think that we are being critical or we have jealous or whatever you call it. We have no jealousy. We are being constructive and we are being defensive for our own country and our own humanity. And this we are going to do whether you like it or not. And we are going to stand up because we know we are right and God is on our side. We have to fight. And we don't have any other choice. We have to fight for our survival. These people Rwabogo refers to as we already know them. We already know them. Anybody who doesn't know them, I would ask you, on which planet do you live? They have done everything to show to us that we are nothing. Now, I want to take you a little bit further. For those of you who may be in my age bracket, might remember when we used to have the British colonialists ruling us. When the British were ruling us, I remember vividly, I was a young boy before independence. I remember vividly those British DCs or whatever, district agriculture officers, they used to come to official ceremonies in khaki shorts. I think the governor is the only one who ever put on long pants, but they always looked like they are khaki long pants. But these other officials, they always put on shorts as if he's going to wash his car outside his house. Now, as a grown-up man and having lived among Bazungu, I can see that you wear shorts when you are casual or despising or looking down upon anybody around you. Yet during our colonial days, when they put on those khaki shorts, the Saza chiefs would come all dressed up in dignified kanzus and the jackets on them. But these people despised us. To them, we were nothing. That's why they put on khaki shorts. at official ceremonies. Recently, when the Tutsis were trying to take over Kinshasa, they had, I think I reported this to you, they had made a ruling that a Congolese woman cannot come into their office unless he is dressed like a Mutusi woman, wearing a mienda. You know, the Congo women wear a kikwembe, which is a dignified way of dressing. Similar to us, we put on a lady or Nabagereka is going to appear. She will never come into pants, you know, wearing pants or, you know, a kitengi. She is always in a busuti to show dignity of who she is. These people forced the Congolese women to wear a mienda. And we are seeing the same thing today in Uganda. People you respect, you think that they would respect you. They come and show you that, hey, you thought you were Baganda, but we are on top. And they just throw this right in your face, including in our own churches. You've seen those pictures. That is a display of kutunyoma, that we are nothing. And I don't think it is accidental. Any Muganda or any Ugandan that is worth your soul should see that there is a sinister way of putting us down, that we are in nothing. We have to wake up. We have to put on new pairs of glasses and see the reality. This is totally unacceptable. It is despicable, and it is downlooking on our culture and our identity as Ugandans, as Baganda, as Banyankole, as Bateso, as Acholis. We have to defend our dignity and not allow anybody, whether he is from within or from outside, to look down upon our culture and our identity as Ugandans. And that's what we have to fight for. And you can count me there.
So, Pogo said something very, what's the word? Very, very disrespectful and triggering. Just a low jab. He said the Baganda have a talent of surviving off of little money. But we all know the economy has been drained to this impoverishment, not only to impoverish the Baganda, but to impoverish every other indigenous group in that geographical boundary, from the Karamajongs to the Acholis to the Itesot to the Sebeis. Everyone has been impoverished only for one looting class, the ruling class, the we he refers to benefit from. So I cannot speak further to that, but I do say to please play the last video, and we will take just a few voice notes, and then we will be soon wrapping up our show for today.
The continued rising of commodity prices continue to concern school owners and parents intending to send their children back to school next week. Many say the continued financial challenges have left them constrained. Charles Chiseka says this second term he has to pay 1.3 million shillings for a primary school child, yet last term he had to part away with 980,000 shillings. Chiseka is not alone, as many other schools have increased tuition fees for next term.
The school proprietors or the head teachers, the directors, they should just revise their decision as far as school fees is concerned, because we are equally affected. We are equally affected by the COVID-19.
We expected it. I've got, I think, a fair increment for one of my children. The fees increased from 600,000 to 750. I mean, considering that most things have doubled in prices or even tripled, I think that's a fair increment.
Chiseka, who also doubles as Executive Secretary in charge of Education and Sports in Kawempe Division, says many private schools have increased tuition fees and a few government-aided institutions are following the same route.
But the point in case is Kawempe Muslim. If a government school is paying 1.8, right now, as we talk, for this time they are going to pay around 2 point something.
For their part, parents said though these are tough times, schools shouldn't increase tuition fees exorbitantly. This comes days after Education Minister Janet Museveni appealed to schools not to increase tuition fees. However, school directors and owners say most schools are still suffering the after effects of COVID-19 lockdown, coupled with a rise in cost of living.
The 50 kilogram sack of maize of maize flour that we have been using at a cost of 80,000 is now 130,000. That is almost double. The beans, now it has increased to 4,500 shillings a kilogram. And these are the ingredients of what we feed our children with.
Now, like mainly primary schools, which have been picking learners from home to school, some of them are giving up because there is no way you can manage unless you increase the fees or the transport fares.
They add that on top of this, they are still faced with a number of areas that accumulated during the 2 years of closure, yet government has refused to waive some taxes despite their constant cries.
But if the government is not considerate of even having a waiver for property rates on schools for the 2 years when we have been in COVID, then you have no reason whatsoever to say that a school increasing school fees to cater for its requirements is unjustified.
The more prolonged lockdown, teachers are trying to venture into business. So we are attracting the teachers back to schools. And now even their cost has gone high. So you have to increase their salary.
The school owners add that whereas teachers in government-aided schools received COVID-19 relief cash, those in private entities are still waiting for their share to date.
Made us file applications of financial assistance or grants, but no single school has even accessed such grants. So we still have issues of rent areas where the school was renting. We still have issues of even salary areas. We still even have issues of loans in the banks. So now with this current economic situation, schools have to be so innovative.
Reflecting on the matter, the technical advisor for the Education Advocacy Network, Patrick Kaboyo, says schools want government to discuss the matter within a view of the challenges that they face.
So the conversation should bring on board managers of schools to tell us exactly what do they spend on, because we all pay fees. So these fees then should be clearly calculated and cost centers identified so that the increase in fees can be understood. But I want to assure you that there will be invisible ways of increase in terms of tuition in every school.
Norbert Atkunda, NTV Weekend Edition.
I think in regards to that video, Mr. Kintu, we just wanted to show the trickling down effect and how what is it they say in Uganda? I've forgotten the saying, but right now people are being pressed not only against the wall, between a wall and a hard rock, but they're being pushed into the wall itself. And this video was shown because if we put this in context, Ugandan schools have not been, for no reason at all, were not opened for 2 years, but they still took tuition. And now that the open tuition has increased and parents are expected to be able to foot this bill, not only in the private institutions, but even the institutions that were created for affordability. And then you have Rabogo saying, we will take away all the services of the people so that they can just be functioning slaves within our system.
Yes, that is true. These people have positioned themselves in every position of control, so much so that they can fulfill what Rabogo mentions. They have used COVID as an excuse, which is a lot of baloney. It is not. That's not true. And nobody should even listen to that nonsense. One of them mentions in that tape that the government should be considerate. Since when did this NRM government be considerate? I don't think they even know the word considerate. Another thing, as I said, they have positioned themselves in every position of power and control. Look at the man parading himself with a Baganda name, Musoke, supposed to be school administrator. Is he actually Musoke? By looking at that picture, he's not. He's one of those who borrowed or stole a Baganda name, put it on himself, and purports to be a Muganda, which he's not. These are the same people. These are the tentacles of the extended Batusi takeover of Uganda. You find them in education. They pretend to be coffee growers. And since when did the Mularo grow coffee? The only thing he can sell is buchuya and muzigo, and also maybe milk. But they are not coffee growers. But they are positioning themselves in every place so that they can maximize total takeover of the country. And the indigenous Ugandans are sitting there. Or if you open your mouth, they kill you, or they take you to Kitali and lock you up forever, or torture you, cut out your limbs, and sell your spare parts to the Arabs. This is the tragedy we Ugandans, we indigenous Ugandans are in. And this is what we have to stand up against. And we better do it, because if we don't, we are going to be read in the history books as now we read about the Mayas and the Aztecs of America. Totally finished, complete. This is what we have to fight. This government is not considerate, and they don't care. Look at that woman pretending to be Minister of Education. She's even laid herself to be educated, because I don't think she knows anything. I am even wondering whether she has ever been to senior secondary school. And how can she be Minister of Education? As if Uganda doesn't have people who can run these institutions. That's why I really admire that Munyankole woman. What is her name? Miriam Matembe? I think that's her name. If I pronounced it wrong, excuse me. And she said she feels like vomiting looking at that woman pretending to be Minister of Education. I feel the same. That's not what we should. And don't expect anything called considerate out of these murderers and the thieves. They will never, and they cannot be, because it's not in their DNA. The only thing they know is to kill, to poison people, to tell lies, and to steal. In those categories, yes, they are excellent, but not in building a nation. That's why we Ugandans have to rise up, not now, yesterday, and get rid of these people.
Please play any messages that we might have as we approach the end of our show today, for there is an urgency for us to rise now, not even now, but yesterday, as you say, Mr. Kintu. So I'll call on the producer. If you do have any voice note messages for us, then we can listen to just a few as we enter that last segment of our show today. But if there isn't any, we will go ahead and also wrap up the show. So please do feel free to let me know.
Thank you very much, Desire and Honorable Remedios Kintu. My name is Sam. I'm contributing and I want to basically awaken all the rest of the fellow Ugandans to this particular call, in that even if you stand at a neutral point of view and you look at someone trying to enforce themselves and claim that probably they are a Chwezi, because if you look at someone's tweets, like the son of Mr. Museveni, the tweets that he basically puts out, trying to call themselves or Bachwezi and something like that, they basically try to put themselves in a particular lineage. I don't know why they are disassociating from the lineage that actually brought them into power, because I don't think there was any Muchwezi who fought or shed their lives for them to come into power. Besides, there is a photo that gentleman took way back with a couple of kids after his father had captured power. I think the kids were child soldiers that the National Resistance Movement had used back then. Now, I'm wondering, since he's making these all over celebrations for his birthday, would it not be supreme to call those kids and also join in? Why is it that the others that actually never fought are the ones that are sitting in the very top places? But anyway, it takes me back to the particular fact that his father one time said that they are going to give jobs to the ones that mean to the sons of the rich people. So I'm wondering, those former child soldiers, were they hailing from rich parents? And the other sad issue is that the Ugandan population has failed to understand that we are dealing with people who have tribal militias. If someone keeps on claiming that they are Chwezi, that means that they are basically looking for anyone they consider to be part of them and arming them, So, because that is our general challenge now. Who has arms and who is being disarmed? So I call upon Mr. Kintu to basically furthermore highlight these challenges to the people, that once you see someone tweeting and they're basically lying on tribalistic issues, we have a Chwezi, we have a Tutsi, we are or we are basically Tigrayans, where actually he even go to a point of calling the Sekabaka of Uganda Mutesa a Muchwezi as well in one of his tweets. So how intoxicated is this particular person, and is it not sensible for any Ugandan out there to really wake up and look at that these people are working towards extinction with the indigenous? Thank you very much.
You want me to answer that?
Directed to you, to the topic that you had brought to our discussion of extinction, because I think that that's something that people ignore very much, and I think the speaker wanted you to talk about what that means in regard of for us, for people to understand, because I think people have not yet wrapped it around their heads that we're headed towards extinction. We're being killed intentionally. We're being impoverished intentionally. So if you could please speak to that.
Yes, Sam is right. This man calling himself Bachwezi is a call for everybody who can identify himself as them to come up of the woodworks, join them, and build a formidable force that is going to sustain their power. Now, you know very well, when Museveni came into, when he started the Luwero fight, they were a handful Batusi, but they capitalized on the dissension and the frustration and the anger that was predominantly in Uganda against the Obote regime. And they used those young people. The whole fighting was not done by Batusi. It was done by Baganda boys. And I mean boys, not men. They were little kids.
Boys.
They were armed and they were given directions, and they are the ones who did the fighting. Now, as soon as they reached victory, they recruited their own people to put them in positions of control and power, and eliminated the Baganda indigenous people who were with them throughout the fight, the 5-year war. Now, they know that they do not have the support of Baganda as they did then in 1980. Now they are looking for new grounds from which they can recruit a new force. That is why my fellow countrymen should understand. That is why they created this new theater in Congo, saying we are going to fight ADF, which does not even exist any longer. But the purpose was to eliminate indigenous Ugandans who are within UPDF, because they are very safe. SFC, or whatever they call it, is 99% Batusi. That is safe. UPDF is where mostly trouble could come from. They have to eliminate all the indigenous Ugandans who are in UPDF. They try to do that by sending indigenous Ugandans into Somalia so that they can be killed by the Somali fighters. They have sent indigenous Ugandans to Iraq and Afghanistan. Some of them have been killed there. Now, whoever is left is going to go into Congo, and we are going to pretend that they died in action or they fell into ambush by the ambush of the enemy, which is not true. They are the ones doing the killing. Until there is going to be a time when SFC is 99% Tutsis and the UPDF is closer to 90, or even if it is 80, that's okay, we can live with it. All right? Now, the entire military force is nothing but Batusi. Now, you come down to the local villages where they have spread new immigrants from Eastern Congo, from Rwanda, throughout the villages, given them our Vibanja, and gave them machetes and guns, and of course money to start a new life comfortably. And you find those not only in Buganda, but also you find them in West Nile, in Acholi, in Karamoja, with a secret order that one day when we blow the trumpet, you all get out of your houses and start slaughtering the indigenous Ugandans who are in your village or neighborhood, wherever you are. This, with that so-called local defense unit, letters and guns of Batusi spread throughout the country, they feel now we are going to be in full control. This is what Ugandans need to understand and know what we are faced with. Because unless you know, you are not going to be able to defend yourself. You got to know your enemy. Then they turn around for you guys in the towns, in the, like Natete, Bwaise, you name it. You guys are being controlled by Batusi women. And if you look around these towns, how many of our native boys have been enticed into having a Mutusi woman in their bedroom? That's the catch. Now, those are going to be controlled by these Batusi women, and they are now starting to show off that they are in control. Some time ago, they were hiding. Now they are not hiding it anymore. They are showing you
everything
we are
is
in control. Yeah, it's coming out in the open. If you don't believe me, go to what was at Rubaga Cathedral today. They showed you they are in control. And if you cannot open your eyes and see what is going on, then I say you are blind. You better as well see an eye doctor. This is what we are faced with. These guys are now calling their own people, arming them, bring them all over the country, ready for that day. By the way, that day is going to come, but they have already started. How many of our people are being killed every day in calculated accidents or being killed because they caught you fishing on Lake Victoria? Since when is it a crime to fish on Lake Victoria as a Ugandan or even a Tanzanian, because Lake Victoria is shared by the 3 countries? Is it a crime for someone to fish in Mwanza or in Kisumu or in Bukoba? Is it a crime? But it's a crime if they catch you fishing in Sese Islands or at Entebbe. People, wake up. The enemy is clear.
And I think it's true. I think the producer is going to play us another voice note. When you're ready.
Thank you, Desire and Mwami Kintu, for the show. Mine is just a comment to call on fellow Ugandans. Truly, this is a sense of urgency. Indifference is not an option at this point. This is a defining moment where all of us need to look into our hearts and realign our priorities with this sense of urgency. Twekube mu mitima, because this is a case of survival and all of us can bring something to the table. We appreciate your insights. We appreciate you drawing our awareness to the sense of urgency. And I hope more of us get to realize that indifference is not an option. Indifference is not an option. It's a call to arms. Thank you so much for your service.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all our viewers, listeners, and the family of UNN. In a special way, I would like to give credit and thanks to all our mothers. Happy Mother's Day. Better late than never, though. In the same way, I would like to give a special thank to our guest and our host, Desire, and our elder, Mr. Kintu. I have a simple question. As you're waiting for UFCC to sit, can't we at least get our people, like our youths, can't we organize them and mobilize them to be standby? That's what I ask. Because as me personally, I have contacts to people, some who have been in the army before, not this previous one. Some, they have gone to Congo, but I have contact with them. Some, they are still there, and they are very eager. Even if they will do screening, that one, I know it has to be there to verify. But what will be, how can we go about that? You might not need to tell everyone everything on air, but it's a simple question. I don't know how I can be guided. If so, then I can start right away. Because I have contact with them, we do communicate. Thank you.
Mr. Kintu, if you would like to comment on any of those two voice notes, please do go ahead and do so.
I thank the first person. I do not have any comment on that because it was clearly stated. The second person, the lady who talked about some youth, well, I don't know what to tell you because I am not speaking on that topic, but I leave it to that lady to deal with it to the best and of her ability and for the benefit of our country.
At that, in terms of mobilization and organizing ourselves, we all have to do, as you say, to the best of our abilities and just network with the right people. This last question, rather comment, it says, I have just spoken to someone who told me that he went to Bombo Barracks and found that a bag of cement outside is 38,000 Ugandan shillings. And in the army shop, although it is 28,000 Ugandan shillings, and other commodities are cheaper compared to prices outside. For this, those related to army personnel can borrow their ID number and use it to shop in these shops. Now, how do we expect such people to fight for us when they have their own shop selling stuff cheaply as the country cries they are comfortable?
Yes, if they feel comfortable when we are not, I don't expect them to have the same awareness as we all do who are suffering. However, there is always another way of dealing with the problem. You can make it expensive for them to feel comfortable. And that is within your own control. So don't throw up your arms and say, well, this is impossible because these guys are comfortable. Who said that they are the ones who are going to save you, or they are the only ones who can save you? You can save yourself. And you can do whatever you want and whatever you can. And I know everybody has the capacity and the ability to do something that can bring a lasting solution to our problem. If a snake, a big snake, like a cobra, is inside your house, you don't count on the Muruka chief or the village chief, now you call them LOC, whatever they are, to come and rescue you or get the snake out of your house. You roll up your sleeves and try to find a way of getting rid of it. Now, if the police can come and help you, that's fine. I know that because my older brother used to be a policeman long time ago, and there was a big snake. He was stationed at Entebbe police station, and there was a big snake in the church at Bugonga. They called the police, and my brother was a very straight shooter. He came as a police officer and shot that bloody snake out of the roof of the church. It came tumbling down on the floor dead. But if there was no such a policeman, I am sure the parish priest or even the parishioners would have found a way of getting rid of the snake because they had already identified it and it was in the church and they were not comfortable worshiping in that church with that big, I think it was a big inswearer up there in the roof. Okay? So we do not have that kind of expectation from the police or from the barracks at Imbuya or Bombo. If they are comfortable, let them be comfortable. But we are uncomfortable, and we are going to find a solution whereby they will find it very difficult to remain in those barracks as a comfort zone. And we better do that because we have the brains.
Of course. I cannot add to that topic. We've come to the winding down of our show today, and I would like to invite you, Mr. Kintu, for closing remarks. But I want to remind everyone and everyone who's been watching today, or people who are going to watch this later, today, after we went through everything, because we were looking at Uganda's economy, but continuously it has been screaming in our heads, screaming right in front of us, that this is a nation whose affairs have been. Every video we looked at, every representative, no indigenous local voice being presented. That's for in economic in our economic living, but yet we know that the economy runs things where livelihood comes from. Like Mr. Kintu, you said, we're all producers and consumers, but all of it is being trajected through one voice, and that's of the hijackers. Found that rather not very insightful to the reality and as of now, and who gets to speak for Ugandans, and the gloating that is happening publicly without even embarrassment. So at this point, I'd like to, welcome you, Mr. Kintu, for any closing remarks, and then we will wrap up today's show.
Thank you very much, Desire, for those nice words. As we close today's show, we are appealing to all Ugandans, no matter what position you occupy, university student, primary school student, teacher, farmer, nurse, doctor, tailor, carpenter, priest, reverend, sheikh, boda driver. Remember that you may be a priest, or you may be a boda driver, or you may be a carpenter. Your uncle, your cousin, your nephew, your clansman, your tribesman is not a priest or a bishop like you. We are all interrelated. The suffering of your cousin, your uncle, your village mate, your tribesman, your countryman is your suffering. We are all in it to help each other so that together we can save Uganda. But those people who think, oh, the Baganda will do it, or the Achoris will come and do it, forget it. That's not the way it is supposed to be done. Let us join hands as Ugandans from West Nile to Busia, from Kabale to Moroto, and anywhere in between. Let's work together to save our country from these invaders who have inflicted so much suffering on Ugandans. And the sooner we do it, the better. And those who think it is impossible or they don't want to be involved, I say, find another country that you can call yours. But if you call Uganda your country, and if Uganda is where your mother, your father, your grandmother was buried or is going to be buried, then you have a direct responsibility. Remember, Grace Ibingira lied to many Ugandans that he was a Munyankole. But when he died, he willed to be taken back to Rwanda. That's where he was buried. Museveni told you just recently He said, I don't care whether Tanzania is going to get more jobs out of the pipeline than Uganda, because after all, most of my relatives are in Tanzania. Who knows if he has willed to be buried in Tanzania where his father ran it to, or he willed to be buried in Rwanda where he originated from. Who knows? You'll be surprised where at that fool's death, he's going to say, they are going to tell you we are taking his body to Kigali for burial, because that's what he willed us to. But I cannot will my body to be buried in Nakuru or Juba or Mwanza. No, I'm a Ugandan.
Mm.
And if I have to be buried in Uganda, it is going to be back in my home village in Budu County. So you Ugandans, please come to your senses, and the time for action is not today, it is yesterday. So you are one day late. Thank you very much, and we'll meet you at the battleground. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kintu. And I cannot add anything but repeat what you said. The battle has already begun. We're one day late. It's a battle of yesterday, but we arrive at it today. So right after this show, we're going to have another show coming up. I hope that with today's message, as the lady said, the moment of indifference is over. We must and we should take up responsibility. There is a new show, as I had mentioned, that will be coming up right after this show. It will be happening every Sunday at 7 p.m. UK time, 9 p.m. Ugandan time, and this is going to be a show with Omulangira Chimbugwe, with also Council Jonathan Mwesigwa, and this is called One Man's View. So do tune in to this show today, right after this one. So I want to thank us today and wish you a good evening, a good morning, a good afternoon, and please spread the message. It is our message to spread, but also I want to call attention that the wave is now. The momentum has picked up. The momentum has picked up on the ground back at home. People cannot live in these conditions, and as members of the diaspora, it is our responsibility to support our people back home and hold together this revolution so that it succeeds. We have very many other revolutions to learn from, and we have very many lessons we can take into this revolution after a revolution of our own just in 2021. Let us show that we have learned our lessons and we have seen where we can apply pressure and support the revolution to continue and be one where we will be on the winning side, because the winning side has already been declared for the masses, for the oppressed people. And let's not take that decision very lightly, but activate that it becomes a reality. Have a blessed day, and with that, thank you for being at the Tower at UNN.
Abantu baffe tebandifuddamu, bana Uganda bangi bandiwonye okubeera mu makomera gano gasiibazimba, oyo bamulaba ng'asala ensalo. Bana Uganda tuyizeemu ki? Kituyigiriza kiffe ku byatukoze, tuyizeemu ki? Twetegeke yeneesobyere mu Buddha. asosola amawanga omubbi w'eggwanga Kayibanda watuzaalira omutemu ono atasiima ne bw'omukoolera amala n'akutta oyo bamulaba yali munaku kati yadaaza abanaku abamukuza bamulabamu ekikyamu bwe yali omuto oyo nga yeewala okubeera mu banne zembeera ze nga bwakama amata tegawera munafusi kyobalaba alemedde mu ntebe y'omwana wa Uganda bannayuganda abalondo waabwe afuge Uganda kati alemeddemu omubbi w'entebe